Hello and welcome back to the Eagle's Nest, the summary of the story of how ski jumping emerged as a great spectator sport in Michigan's Gogebic Range and the surrounding areas of Wisconsin and Minnesota. This narration is based on the book Soaring with the Eagles, the Copper Peak Story by Charles Suprasinski and is available at the Copper Peak bookstore. So we're still at the turn of the 20th century, and we talked in our previous chapter about the tremendous and huge arrival of Scandinavian immigrants to the upper Midwest, bringing their love of skiing with them to America and the origin of ski jumping competitions in the Wausau, Wisconsin area, Duluth, Minnesota, Ishpeming, Michigan, and the formation of early ski clubs and associations. They all helped to make ski jumping popular as a winter sport. During the late 1800s, the expansion of the railroads from lower Wisconsin north to Duluth and east to Saxon, Wisconsin, Ironwood, Michigan, and all the way through Marquette, Ishpeming, and to Sault Ste. Marie allowed thousands of immigrants to arrive for work in the iron and copper mines as well as in the lumber industries. So all of this development and expansion allowed new towns and cities to build ski jumping scaffolds or jumps as attractions for interested tourists and visitors. And these new communities also realized the value and economic impact of a large crowd of people coming to their town for a weekend of entertainment, and so the Ironwood area ski enthusiasts were determined to build a ski hill capable of national and world record jumps. In Ironwood, their ski club was kind of loosely organized, and a ski scaffold was built 50 feet long and 25 feet high. The location for this new hill was at White's Hill, about a half-mile north of Highway US 2 and north of the fairgrounds in the western end of town. It will later be referred to as Curry Hill. In 1905, they built a scaffold. Skiers had learned to jump at this first hill, and they had held a local tournament. So progress was starting to be made. In January 1906, it was decided to officially organize the club. And this time is when we see the entry of the local leaders of the community coming together to formally create the Ironwood Ski Club. They were getting serious finally. The charter officers of the club were as follows: President Albert W.V. Johnson, Captain Eric Nyberg, Vice President Miss Lila B. Arnold, Secretary James O'Neill, Treasurer George A. Curry, Assistant Secretary Miss Sadie McLeod. Executive Committee was J. H. McLean, H. F. Eller Jute, and J. R. Thompson, Dr. Yates, D. E. Sutherland, C. P. Lee, and Carl Erickson. Did you notice that two of the officers of the club were women? Miss Lila Arnold was the vice president, and Miss Sadie McLeod was the assistant secretary. And we're talking 1906 here, folks. Do you think that maybe these men on the board of the ski club knew the value of women to an organization? And the old saying goes, if you want to get things done, ask a woman to do it. Anyway, these were the movers and shakers of their day, and you'll notice that quite a few of the streets in today's city of Ironwood are named after them. Sutherland Street, Sutherland Avenue, McLeod Avenue, and of course, Curry Street. So you could say the Ironwood Ski Club was off and running in the race to see what city in the upper Midwest would have a national or even a world record ski jumping hill. Whoever had the longest jumps usually got to host the next big tournament in the following year. So 1906 and 1907 were growing years, not only for Ironwood, but for all the cities that had invested time and energy in ski jumping as a popular spectator sport. Duluth, Ishpeming, Stoughton, and even Ashland, Wisconsin expanded their hills in efforts to gain a reputation for crowd-pleasing ski tournaments. Bigger makes better seemed to be the byword for all the local communities as the race was on in 1906 and 1907 ski jumping meets. The '06 meets were restricted by unusually bad weather and poor hill conditions in Ashland and Ishpeming. Ironwood did send jumpers to compete but were unable to place due to the hill conditions and weather, but it was a good experience for them anyway. In ski jumping, there's a saying, wait till next year, and 1907 was one of those years when the ski season got off to a resounding success with an important local event held in Duluth, Minnesota on Saturday, January 20th. The American distance record was broken by a number of skiers. According to the Ironwood News Record, the headline was "Some Big Yump," spelled with a Y. Duluth's riders carried off all the best prizes in their ski tournament. The first prize was won by Ole Fearing, his longest jump being 112 feet, which breaks the American record, and his two other jumps were 108 and 110 feet, so that in each of his jumps he exceeded the former record of 106 feet. All four of the Duluth prize winners exceeded the 100-foot mark in their jumps. The Duluth event showed that the 100-foot marker was consistently broken at this competition. The Ironwood Ski Club was still in its infancy, though, and the skiers from the Ironwood had still not been able to develop their skills to the point where they were competitive. Meanwhile, the years 1908 and 1909 continued to show the trend of bigger hills and longer jumps as contestants improved their jumping and landing techniques. Once a record was set, it would be broken in a week, later at another city's club location as they held their big meet. An example of the momentum and popularity of ski jumping is the Ishpeming annual tournament in 1908, when a crowd of 8,000 to 10,000 people, just imagine that, watched all of the American records broken in that one meet. John Everson of Duluth jumped 122 feet for a record, and young Barney Riley of Coleraine, Minnesota won first place in the juvenile division, clearing 98 feet with ease. It didn't take long, however, for the record to be broken again, this time in Duluth. John Everson of Duluth again broke his own record on March 28th at the Duluth Hill. The former record was 122 feet set by Everson himself in Ishpeming just 4 weeks prior, and 4 other riders outdistanced that old record. This was even more remarkable because the day was warm and it was necessary to haul snow from the nearby woods to prepare the slide for jumping. 1909 also brought a reclaiming of the world record in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin, with the jump of 138 feet by Oscar Gunderson. The previous world record had been held for 7 years by Nels Gestvang with a jump of 135 feet in 1902. The Chippewa Falls Tournament of 1909 was the first event to mention a twin jump where 2 riders rode the entire hill down the scaffold and jumped over the hill side by side. The hills at Ishpeming, Duluth, Chippewa Falls, and Eau Claire were now regularly producing jumps in the 100 to 140 foot range. American records were being broken regularly, and for a short time at least, there was a world record was brought to the USA. No doubt this must have electrified the skiing community in Ironwood to start thinking about the size of their hill. If they were going to compete with these other cities, they would have to enlarge their hill to get longer jumps. So, in 1910, the Curry Hill side was enlarged, And compared to other hills in the Midwest, Ironwood was falling behind before it got started, with plans to enlarge the scaffold at Curry Hill. The Ironwood Ski Club was anxiously awaiting the start of the 1910 ski season. The addition made to the Curry Hill slide would be of sufficient size to maybe earn a world's record. The first local tournament held at the enlarged hill on Sunday, February 20th, 1910, is described a week after the event in the Ironwood News Record. With the headline being Last Sunday's Ski Tournament, here's how the local paper described what happened. Louis Bourdain handily won first place in the tournament of the Ironwood Ski Club held last Sunday afternoon. This was held at the new slide at the Curry Hill. He not only finished first with a total of 319 points, but he made the longest jump without falling, covering 94 feet. This is the record for the new slide in competition, but that distance will be broken by many feet in tomorrow's tournament. Eskil Gustafsson was second with 293 points, and Eric Nyberg was third with 290 points. The attendance was large, and the work of the riders was creditable and much enjoyed. You'll notice that this article contained a new twist in the scoring, which included style points. In order to liven up the scoring, instead of just recording the length of the jump, up to 20 points were allowed for style, how good you looked when you were in the air and while landing. For the tournament, you were allowed 3 jumps. If you fell, that jump did not count. But for example, if you had 3 jumps of 100 feet and looked average going over the landing and didn't fall, you'd get a score for the day of 330 points. Anyway, we're back to the new expanded and improved Curry Hill, and their first invitational tournament was held on February 27th, 1910. The ski club promoters were very hopeful for this tournament. They had publicized the event and hyped it up as much as possible. All you had in those days was the local newspapers and word of mouth, though. The promotional ad, as run in newspapers, used colorful descriptions for the event to pique the potential interest. Here's how it would have sounded if there was radio in those days. At Ironwood, Sunday, February 27th, 1910, the annual great, big, sensational ski tournament at Curry Hill. Ole Faring, one of the best ski jumpers in the business, will be there at Curry Hill. Bigger, better, faster, and higher than ever. All the great leapers will be there. All the human biplanes, monoplanes, dirigibles, and skyscrapers. All the boys, including the Americanized Norwegians and Barney Riley of Coleraine, are coming. Every one of these daring professionals who daily shake dice with death and hurl their forms through space regardless, have sent word that they will be in Ironwood to show us. We give fine prizes, gold, silver, and greenbacks, also suitable prizes for amateurs. We have one of the finest hills in America and plenty of snow, comfortable for spectators and correct for skiers. Come and help us to celebrate the Ironwood Ski Club. Well, the timing of the Ironwood meet was ideal and on purpose so that jumpers who had competed in Ishpeming and Scandia the week before would find Ironwood as a convenient stopping off point on their way home to Wisconsin and Minnesota. The success of the tournament at the improved Curry Hill on Sunday, February 27th, 1910, is summed up in the article in the Ironwood News Record. The article said, "The tournament of Ironwood Ski Club was a success in every particular. The tournament of the Ironwood Ski Club held and the club's new slide at Curry Hill last Sunday afternoon was the most successful affair of its kind ever held in this section. The weather conditions were ideal, and there was a fine lineup of athletes who faced the starter, and the crowd in attendance was large and enthusiastic. The longest jump of this tournament was made by Barney Riley, the national amateur champion of Coleraine, Minnesota, who covered 126 feet, landing beautifully and swept past the deadline with the hill record to his credit. A few minutes before Riley's stellar effort, Louis Bourthain of Ironwood, who will press the best of the amateurs in the country for the championship in another year, made a jump of 123 feet, finishing the run in fine form. The professional jumpers who performed their work earlier in the afternoon, when the sun's rays reached the slide, seemed unable to do better than 110 to 115 feet. But the work of practically all of them was of the highest order, and the falls were very few. Longer jumps were made here than at the recent tournament at Coleraine, Minnesota, showing that Ironwood has a first-class slide. So in just 5 short years, the Ironwood Ski Club had advanced the level of competition with the construction of the new Curry Hill to the point of being competitive with any of the ski clubs in the Midwest. Well, that just about does it for this chapter of the Eagle's Nest, the story of ski jumping in the Midwest and the Great North Woods and in around the Ironwood, Michigan area, the home of Copper Peak, the largest artificial ski jumping slide in the world. Oh, and by the way, why not make a point to put a visit to Copper Peak on your bucket list of things to do while you're in the area? They're open 7 days a week from 9:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Central Time during the summer and fall. They have a gift shop, an adventure ride to the top of the hill, and staff on site to answer your questions and assist you on your visit. I hope you'll enjoy us again next time on the Eagle's Nest, when we'll move along on our little time machine to 1911 and a few years beyond to tell you about how the Ironwood Ski Club became owners of the world ski jumping record. And just a program note, this show, The Eagle's Nest, can be heard every day at 6 a.m. and 11 a.m. Central Time, as well as at 6 p.m. and 11 p.m. Central Time. And for our international listeners, you can hear us at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. and 2 a.m. and 2 p.m. in Oslo and Warsaw. In other international areas, please adjust your times accordingly. Thank you for listening. This is your narrator, Dan McManaman, saying, see you next time we meet.